Good evening and welcome to Drone Daddy. I'm your host, Ryan. As you know, we left off on Tuesday night on our Tuesday Night Live, and we were unable to complete it as I had the wrong frame. And so we're going to go ahead and pick up where we left off. Do note that there is a lack of sound for the last half of that first video, and so I will be going back and doing a narration on that, speeding it up a little bit, and then pairing these two videos together to make one video, and that should be ready before our next Tuesday Night Live. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's head down to the bench here. I'm going to get some light now, and let's get to our bench. There we go. So as we left off, we are sitting with a bunch of pieces, and so let's go ahead. I'm just checking my auto, make sure we're working this time. So I did set up my little soundboard and a nice Pro 37 Audix condenser microphone, so everything should sound pretty good. Oh yeah, that's that's what I don't like about the iPad version, is it's really hard to chat on there. I think you can get to chat, but it's not real intuitive. So anyway, I'll go back and narrate that, and we will go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of remember which way I want to orient this. So this does come fully loaded with BetaFlight. Right now I think it's at 3.1.2. I will be doing a small video on how to upgrade this board, and because I'd like to upgrade it to 3.2 at least. But I won't be doing that tonight. One thing I did talk about last video was, hopefully that'll focus, is that, I don't know if you can see this real well. I might switch to manual focus because it sure seems to not want to focus. It wants to focus more on my hand than on the object. So give me just a moment here, and we will get that focused. There we go. Okay, so this camera here looks to be normal, but if you kind of look on the side, you can see that this side is a little higher than that side. And what that does is when you're flying the whoop, and then the board's all level, maybe from the side you can kind of see it. Let me get a bigger monitor so I can actually see when things are in focus. That what happens is there's a little bit of an angle on this lens. And so what happens is it kind of feels like your head is tilted to the side, even though it's not. And so you're naturally wanting to kind of tilt your head back to kind of correct it. But once you realize that's what's going on, it's fine. I was just going to pull the board thinking that this is just kind of like a two-sided tape pad that's sitting under here, and I think there is one there. But there is also, I don't know if you can see real well. I'll see if I can focus that a little bit. This top board at these 2 points, here and here, are actually soldered through 2 pins, and then there's also another solder point right here and here to these 2 pins. So in order to reseat this board and get it level, I've got to desolder, and then typically what they have you do is they get some of these hair rubber bands, some of these kind of rubber bands, and you whip them around the board to level it out, and then you solder the board back on. So hopefully that gives a much more level thing. And I may do that. I do have a spare camera in case I bust it. And so if I break it, well, then I've got options. I'm not going to do that tonight because I want to get back to flying. I haven't flown in almost a week with this quad, and I'm kind of jonesing a little bit, so I'm just going to get it working again. I'll deal with the slight tilt, and I'll go ahead and fix it in another video. Maybe on another Tuesday Night Live we'll go ahead and fix it, and if not, we'll have a standby camera ready to go, and we will get it going. But let's get this thing in the air tonight and do some flying around the house together. I will be doing some flying live as well, so stick around for that. That's kind of fun. You get to watch me chase my kids around if they're around, or you know, the dog maybe. This thing's really fast. So what I do know anyway is that, back to what we were talking about, the port here, this USB port, allows us to connect to Betaflight on the computer, program the board and the flight characteristics of the quad, and then disconnect. Well, I want to be able to get to that without having to take the whole quad apart. So you can see there's a big opening right here, and so I'll focus that back in once we start working. So what I'm going to do is we are going to focus down on here a little bit more, and we're going to focus. Okay, my hand's kind of in the way of the light, so I'll try to work around the lighting a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I want to feed this through here, so that's going to be my back. Before I do that, I got to get the mounts on. There's these little rubber mounts that you can kind of maybe see, and they go on the posts to hold the board in place. And then when you screw it down, it kind of squishes the rubber around these outer edges here of the board. Philosophical Gamer, how's the sound there tonight? Is it better? A lot better than it was last night, the last time? If you're still watching. So the next thing we need to do is we need to start putting these motors in. And I believe the clockwise motors are here. In fact, we should probably go just check that real quick together. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and put this one in, but I do want to check. Now, these motors are pretty tight, but they will slide in once they're kind of in place. And eventually what we're going to do is there's these little tracks back here, and we're going to use the tweezers to kind of get the wires back in these tracks when we plug in the board. But we're going to leave them loose right now. We're going to plug them into the board first, and then we'll get them seated. I think that will be the best way to do it. So now our other clockwise motor is going to go down here. And you know what the cool thing about Betaflight is if I actually get the motors reversed, well, I can always reverse them in Betaflight. So I'm pretty sure that's the way it's working. I don't know what I did with the manual, and I don't really want to waste your time and go check. So worst case scenario, I have to pull the motors. That's okay. Technically, I could test it, but let's be risky. I didn't learn my lesson on Tuesday, so let's do it again. Cool. Sounds like the sound's working a lot better. So there's our two clockwise motors. So what's happening here, and the way we figure out what prop to put on, is we have to think about kind of how the dynamics of that work. So let's focus on here a little bit. So as you can see, there's a slope here that goes up. If the prop is turning this way, it's going to scoop the air and force it down from the top. So the air is it's going to pull the air, kind of push it back out the bottom. And that's what we want. However, if it was over here and turning that way, it's actually going to push the air, because these motors turn counterclockwise. It's going to turn this way, which scoops the air atop here and pushes it down instead of up. So it's important to get your props on the right direction. And you can always tell, okay, if it's turning clockwise, then this one's going to kind of scoop the air, and if you were to just put it on like a slope, it's going to slope itself up. So it's going to push that air down, and the counterclockwise motor looks like this, and is going to turn this way and do the same thing. If we turn this one this way, it's actually going to push the air up. If we turn it counterclockwise, it's going to push the air up, and pushing it up will push us to the ground, not create lift. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put our counterclockwise motors in. And again, you can just kind of start to work them in there, and once they work past the top part, they should just slide in. Always be careful when putting too much pressure on the tops of these guys here, because they will, on the cord motors, this is a cordless motor, but I think on the cord motors you can actually push the bottom out and run your motor. So I know it's out of focus down there, but I'm trying to kind of keep it where I'm holding so things will stay in focus. Hopefully that'll work out for us tonight. I'll kind of keep an eye on it as best as I can. This is a learning process for me, so we'll get going. If I remember correctly on who that is that's watching and chatting with me, I think everybody's getting wanting to Jones for some Star Wars: The Old Republic pretty soon. I know Jeremy is, my son, and if it's who I think it is, your sister was on the other night and she was kind of jonesing for it herself. So let's go ahead and we're kind of getting close. This shouldn't take very long tonight. I think this will finish up pretty quickly and we'll get to I've got 4 of these 260 milliamp, upside down, 260 milliamp batteries. There we go. 260 BetaFPV 260 milliamp high voltage batteries, and so they give us about 3.5–4 minutes of flight time depending on how I'm flying. And I got 4 of those all charged up and ready to go. So we should be able to have some fun flying around the house tonight. And then I will of course clip that and add it to the flights playlist. My goal is on all of the nights where we build something, and even when we don't, we get a little bit of flight time together. As the weather clears up, we'll take it outside and fly. Haven't quite figured out how I'll take care of chat yet. Maybe I'll take Philosophical Gamer here and make him a moderator, and he can handle the chat for me while I'm flying, if he's around. Now these do go a certain way, and I always try to figure out, it's hard. You want the fatter side on the top, which I think that way. And that way. And that way. Oh, try to keep my hands in the camera, sorry. I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to set my workstation up quite yet. I'm older, and so I am needing to use a magnifying glass on some of these really, really tiny boards. And so I want to be able to use my helping hands, which are these guys here. But I don't want you guys to have to sit and look through it through the video. So if I can keep the camera on this side and then keep the helping hands over here, hopefully we'll be able to keep the camera fairly clear. We'll work on it and get better at it together. And yeah, I figured you might end up doing that because it's hard to not have that second crew skill. It makes it really hard to just make any of your own gear, and then you're going to have to rely on a guild or a team to kind of get you the extra stuff that you need. I have it's grandfathered into my account from when I was a paid account. Jeremy has that problem too, and I might actually buy him that piece just because it's really annoying. Okay, so what you do is you're just going to kind of work this board into these rubber slots, and it's tricky. You got to put a little tension on it. Just be careful not to put too much, because they are geared to hold the board in there, so you want the tension. But you want to try to get it in there without causing yourself too much trouble. And then when you get one on, you don't want to pop the others off. I'd actually like to take this antenna and possibly replace it with a cloverleaf antenna out the back, laying flat. But you know, with as much as I'm crashing right now, those antennas are a little more fragile. And so there's that. So what I'm going to do here, before I get it screwed down, now that I got it in place, So what's going to happen next is we're going to put a screw here and a screw here. And then eventually the cover will go on and we'll screw it down to these two. We want this as kind of least bendy as possible. I'm going to plug in a battery, make sure it cycles properly. In fact, I may even just kind of check the motors now without that. And you can see that it came on. I'll turn on my controller, which is right here. I've got a Turnigy Evolution. And should be armed. I may have to rebind the controller. Let's see, let's hook up our camera real quick. See what's going on. So I have a little FPV camera that I can switch over to, and we can take a look at. That's always wants to switch back to my webcam, which I'm using. Okay, well that's working. Okay. Oh, I guess you guys would like to see that. Hold on just a second. Let me switch views. Okay, so you can see that everything's loaded up there, and we're connected via our controller. So that's good. The reason why the motors aren't speeding up is, well, I haven't plugged them in. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug this video for a moment and switch back to our desk. And you definitely don't want to leave your stuff plugged in too long. There's no airflow when you're not flying it, and these guys can overheat, and you definitely don't want to overheat your VTX here, otherwise it will be done. So let me bring my chat window back up over here, because I had to bring up the flying window. So I can't really chat and fly at the same time, at least not yet. I'm still trying to figure a way. It'd be cool if I could somehow get it in the OSD, but I haven't quite figured out a way to transmit that in there, and I don't know that there would be a way. So yeah, so we're getting close. Let's go. I'm going to go ahead and secure this board so we can put some tension on from the bottom. So we just need to take our time, because I drop these screws. If you drop these screws on the carpet, you will definitely not find them again. Fortunately, I have a few extras, but... And of course, if you know, it's annoying to look at something that's not in focus, so... And we're going to just turn it a little bit. I'm going to focus this down again so I can work on it. Okay, next screw. See, it really wants to come back out once you start screwing stuff in, so definitely be aware of that. It's definitely wanting to pop off the sides, so you'll have to work that with some care. I'm going to go ahead and put this next guy on here in front of the camera. What I might do is maybe not tension this screw down as much as this one, in hopes to get the board to kind of lean back the other way a little bit to straighten the camera out. I don't know how well that will work. But I'll tell you what, man, I've had so much fun flying this thing around. I thought it was going to be really hard. What I found out is Josh Bardwell just recently interviewed Jesse Perkins, who kind of developed the whole Beta Whoop thing, and he actually has a trademark, or not Beta Whoop, but Tiny Whoop, and has it trademarked, everything. Everybody kind of calls these Tiny Whoops even when they're not. As Joshua pointed out, that's just, you know, it's like calling Band-Aids everything a Band-Aid even when not everything really is a Band-Aid. So what I'm doing is, we'll focus back out again. Now what I'm doing is just every once in a while these cords get trapped under the motor, and I don't want to put a lot of tension on them there. And then we should just be able to, this motor, let's see, where am I? So, each motor just plugs into their corresponding location. And there's one. There's two. What you doing, son? Ah. And then there is three. The thing about tiny whoops is, well, everything's tiny. And when you got big hands, it's that much more challenging. Okay, so now before I run these cables into their trout, I'm going to make sure the motors are working, because it would be a lot of work to pull. It's a lot of work to pull them out. You can see we're getting close to, actually getting close to being done. Move that guy back on. When I got this Beta 65, my frame was actually kind of torqued, like in from sitting in the box so long. So that would probably be one of the one downsides I had in the shipping, and the fact that this board was not mounted level, and there wasn't a check on that. So I would just watch the quality control on that, and we'll get into that in the review. It is a little difficult to bind this to a Turnigy. This is a Turnigy receiver, and there's no telemetry back to the transmitter to tell it, hey, I'm bound. And so what happens is you try to bind it, and you kind of go through the motions, and it doesn't bind. So you need to make sure that when you bind it, and I'll go through binding when I go through the review, but when you bind it, you want to make sure that you put the copter in bind mode. You then put your controller in bind mode. You let it bind to let your lights settle, and then once the bind happens, you need to exit out of bind mode on your controller and then unplug the battery and plug it back in, and everything should be bound up after that. If you ever have problems with that, go ahead into YouTube, leave a comment, and we'll get you hooked up. If not, there's other guys out there too, you know, Josh Bardwell, and some of those people would be more than happy to kind of help you get started on that. So I would be surprised if they wouldn't. They're super helpful from what I've seen. So let's go ahead and test the motors real quick. Well, they're definitely working. That one's working. That one's working. That's working. Let's see. Yeah, it feels like they're all running counterclockwise and clockwise like they're supposed to, so we got that right. I'm going to disarm it. I'm going to power off my controller and disconnect the battery. So we are super close. We just need to tuck these guys in, which is easier than it sounds. So the easiest way that I've found to do this, because honestly, if you get your rubber bands on and they don't break, if you miss, you miss, and it's really not going to do. So we're going to slip these rubber bands. They're kind of like braces rubber bands, only not as thick. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to, I'm going to be really careful. These are silicone wires, so they're pretty sturdy for their size, but they will break. And if they break, obviously you don't get any connection. So we're just going to rotate. And a magnet on a stick, best friend for dropping screws. Sorry, that's been up there probably for a while, but doing this and reading chat's a little more challenging than it is with some gaming. So yeah, it definitely is, and I definitely have one of those. But man, these little screws, they like to bounce on carpet. And I literally dropped one the other day. I found it, but it took me a while because it happened to land on a dark carpet. But when I bumped it off of this table, it went like 4.5, 5 feet. It hit the carpet and like flew somewhere, and so it went pretty far away. I was way farther. So even with a magnet, if you don't know where to look, you're not going to find it. So I just try to be very careful with these smaller screws. This guy's nice and tight to the bottom there. He doesn't want to quite go in, and I don't really want to force it. As long as it's not getting in the way of the props, we'll be okay. We'll just keep an eye on it. It's in there, it's just not in there as well as I'd like, but I also don't want. That's pretty, I'm sorry, I'm moving that off. So we're just trying to get this wire into the trough. It's a lot harder than it sounds. Not impossible. Massive deja vu moment. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and see how this wire's kind of pinched back that way. I don't like doing that. So we'll just get it as flat as possible, as I really don't want to turn the motor out and around, because I've already got it plugged in. So it should be alright, it's not pinched or anything. I just prefer to kind of have the motors coming out the side that they're plugged into as best as possible. So we're going to throw that over there. Those rubber bands just kind of help keep the wires out of the props, and believe me, the thing that will end your night the fastest is burning out props. Now, because these are brushed motors, yeah, exactly, those little gray plastic pieces. Now, these are brushed motors, so they will burn out. I mean, they're just going to burn out, and that's just life. They are super cheap. I bought a pack of like 3 full sets. I want to say it was like $9 or 10, maybe it was $19, but it was cheap for what you're getting. And those will last me for as long as I'm not burning the same direction motor out all the time. It should last a while. I'm hoping to get into some racing here in the club locally, but I still got to get my AMA insurance. It looks like I'm down a rubber band. Yeah, so I'll have to buy another rubber band. I don't actually have one handy at the moment. So what we'll do is I'm going to just make sure that gets in its trough. And then make sure as much of the excess as possible is not by the motor. And I think, just to be on the safe side, I have a little bit of clear tape. And if I can do it without having to wrap it around the entire motor, really doesn't have to be super strong. Just needs to sit over the top. Just Alright, so now we're all hooked up, motors are tucked away. So now I need to open up BetaFlight and recalibrate the accelerometer. Give me a moment, I didn't open that up. Okay, beta flight is coming. Takes it a little bit to load, but it is loading, or I hope it's loading. We'll give it a second. Yep, I think it just fired off there. There it is. Alright, so I'm going to add this to this window. Where's my window capture? I want beta flight configurator. Okay. I didn't like that, so let's remove, yes, and we'll do an add display capture. I can't do that either. Maybe I can. Display capture. That's the wrong one there too. One more. Almost there. My apologies. I meant to set this up beforehand. It's that one that I want. Okay. There we go. So beta flight is up. So now what I need to do is I need to connect my quad. We actually don't need to put the battery in. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. Okay. One thing I'm doing here is I want to make sure, see, we're all connected up. I need this to be level. The problem is I got this stupid little cable during out. So what I tried to do is get the two front motors on, and it's definitely not calibrated. I know what I'm going to do. I have a angled one that I normally use that's a little better for this, so we're going to pull that. I know you guys can't see me or anything right now, but this will just take a second. Okay. Alright, now I can lay the copter flat. So you can see here what I did is I put an elbow on there. So now I can lay this pretty flat. You want to make sure it's as flat as possible so that when you calibrate the accelerometer, it is level. Now this table's probably not super level. You know what, before I do that, let's go back. Go ahead and just leave it plugged in for a few minutes because it doesn't actually run the camera. Let's go ahead and get this guy. I'm going to unplug it actually just because it's in my way. I should probably get this all completely seated before. And again, I'm going to try to run this guy a little lower than the one on the right here. Just using pressure to try to get a little bit different lean. So let's go ahead and tighten the back down. We definitely don't want to tighten these too tight. It is just plastic and you will break it or strip it. Okay, and so let's get our cover on, and we want our antenna definitely out up the back, and our camera out the front. Now's where you're going to see the kind of, it'll be easier to see the, although I think I got it a lot straighter than it was, so that's something. If you're chatting right now, I because of the beta flight window, in fact, I'll put the chat window up over top for now. Okay, and I do appreciate you all joining me. It helps my ratings when you people watch longer. So, yay me, and yay you. Hopefully, we'll get lots of people on these Tuesday nights. In fact, I'm hoping to get some people that actually know what they're doing way better than I do. Because me... I am just learning all of this, and so make sure our board didn't come out. Okay, so we're good. I am still learning all of this, and while I've learned a lot, I've watched probably, I don't know, 50, 60 hours of YouTube videos on how to do this, and I stumbled on Josh Bardwell by accident, actually, and when I first, he's going to hate me for saying this, but it's obvious by the shirt that he has. Boy, he annoyed me. First episode, only the first time I saw him, and he was talking about legal stuff, and I thought, man, this guy's really, I don't know, and so, but then he did a video of something that I had to watch, and I watched through, and man, I've over the past month of watching him, I've gained so much respect for him. Obviously, he's been in the hobby for so long, and I just can't tell you how much I respect the guy. He's level-headed. He keeps his opinions semi-unjaded. You know, he's got his own opinions, and he's entitled to those, but he also respects the opinions of other people, and I just really appreciate when you find people like that. So thank you, Josh Bardwell, for everything that you're doing for the hobby. Same goes to Mark over at Drone Racer 101 and Drone Mesh. Congratulations on your new office. That is fantastic. I'm so happy for you. You've definitely earned it. Your technical work is amazing. And then, of course, Drone Camps RC. I just like the guy. He's cool and does pretty good reviews. So, all right, so I think we're all bundled up. And what we're going to do now is we are going to put the motors on. So easiest way to do that is just push them on. Again, you got to make sure you get the right motors in the right spot. So our blue-red wire is here. So that's one of our clockwise. Again, clockwise is going to push the air down with this side prop. And they just slide right on. And what I usually do is I kind of brace it behind here with my fingernail, or grab the motor if that doesn't work. They're really tight, but you don't want to push too hard too fast. Get them on there, get them seated. That looks good. There's one, and there's our other clockwise motor. Clockwise. Counterclockwise. And counterclockwise. So I did put the blue motors on because I am going to be doing a review of this guy. And so I wanted it to be its stock configuration when I do the review. These little quad blade props you can get from eSheen, and I'll end up putting the link below if you want to pick up a pack. I think I picked up a pack of like 8 sets for, they were, I don't know, a couple bucks. They were really cheap. They add so much speed to these motors, it's kind of crazy. I get a lot of speed. Now the only thing I don't know is how much they are overworking the motors. I didn't notice any real heat. I did get a little bit of heat on them. But they sure worked really well. Okay, so now we're ready to load. Let's go back to Betaflight, get her leveled, check the motors. I'm going to check them on with props. You certainly should not do that. Should not do that with a big quad especially, so it's not a good habit to be in. But I am kind of curious as to that. So let's go ahead and go into Betaflight. And let's calibrate. So let's calibrate it. There, you can see it's done. So now when I pick it up, woo! Although, that's interesting. Place board frame level surface perceived. definitely not. I don't remember if this one actually did show. I may have to do another episode on getting that fixed. We'll see. It's definitely not figuring out which the right direction. Oh, it needs the battery for the motors. So motor 1, motor 2, motor 3, motor 4. So it's got the right motor, so that's good. Normally, as you can see, there's this big warning here that says, hey, take your props off, stupid. Because honestly, in a bigger quad, they could take your fingers off. So it's actually not funny because it's probably happened. But you just don't normally do that with the props on unless you're just really sure of what you're going to be doing. In this case, I just wanted to make sure it had the right motor turning. I could have done that by feeling the motor, but I was being lazy. Definitely not a safe thing to do. So disclaimer, take your props off when you're on the bench. I'm going to go ahead and you can get all sorts of telemetry. There's actually black boxes on these. This particular quads and the smaller ones don't have black boxes, at least the ones that I know of. But the bigger quads do, and so you can actually like take your video and overlay the telemetry and get an idea. The black boxes are actually pretty cool. Once I get my first big quad, we'll be certainly checking those out together as well. So now I'm going to disconnect, and we're going to do it. And now it is going to be flight time. So I'm going to move. We are all done. Everything's connected. She should fly pretty well. We're going to use the half-used battery first. I'm going to close Betaflight. And then I'm going to get the other thing working via the same thing I used to connect to Betaflight. Try, and we have that. All right. So now we're going to plug in the battery. Put the battery in the whoop. We are going to plug in the battery. And I am so excited. I have not... See, the OSD is all set up. And we are going to watch me fly around and go spy on my son, because that's always fun. And let me just make sure I'm sitting in the camera. I may pop out the goggles. I actually don't need it. I've got a view here right on my screen that I can actually watch and fly with there, so that I can actually see if anybody's chatting as well. Hopefully you can still hear me okay. I'm going to mute my desktop because that's going to sound really weird. Alright, here we go. So let's arm up. I need to place all switches and up. Now mine starts out in air mode, which kind of flips me around there. So it's been a while since I flew, and it looks like there's a little glare there, but we'll get past it. So I'm going to put it in stabilize mode for now, and let's get out of here. It looks like we'll need to do some trimming. In order to do trimming, I want to do stick trim. And so there, I fixed that. So now we're looking pretty good. It's drifting pretty good to the left. See, the voltage is already going pretty low, but it always does on this. And I may end up needing my goggles because it is far away. There's my son. He's watching some Star Wars Clone Wars. So right now you all are seeing exactly what I'm seeing for the most part. Oh, I just hit myself. Walk of shame. So it's pretty cool. You know, you can fly these around the house pretty good. There I am watching my monitor. Once it gets down to about 3 volts, I'll usually take these guys in. What's cool about it, sorry, I was flying one of my kids' drones the other day and it's way more touchy, so now I'm having a hard time getting used to this as well. But you can go do some pretty tight spaces, like we can go right next to the ceiling here and we're going to go up and say hi to Toothless. And fly around. Ah! Black Hawk down. Alright, so let's get another battery. Okay, I'm going to grab another battery real quick. See, it immediately jumps back up to 3-4 volts, which is about where I want. We are going to disarm, which is about where I want to okay, so see, we are all connected up with our controller again. Make sure I'm still having audio. We're going to do one more flight. Is there anything? Video always that staticky? Well, it is. It's transmitting. It's only a 25 milliwatt transmitter, and actually this little thing that I have here to get it to you, I can't get it into view exactly, but let's see. This guy here, it's just got a little Doppler antenna. It's 5.8 gigahertz analog, so it's not digital. And you know, if there's any interference, you're going to get to. But honestly, you get used to it really fast. It really doesn't bother me. A lot of people will put GoPros. Oh, I'm going to need to repair it again. Trying to talk and fly. A lot of guys will put GoPros on the bigger ones to get full HD video where you don't have the static. But honestly, the static doesn't affect... Oh. I know where that is. All right, I'll be right back. That's going to get hard to get to. There you are. Walk of shame, that's what we call it. All right. So I've only been flying for a little while, so I'm definitely not an expert at flying yet. And honestly, in the goggles, especially when I have a hard enough time flying without talking. So in the goggles, you don't really notice it all that much, and so you get used to it, and the static is really kind of intermittent, and so this actually will fly in full acro, so I will show that here for a second. Although I have my I do have my PIDs and my rates and things turned way down. Help me get used to flying, and then I'll be turning them back up. So Acro Mode, what happens is for those of you who don't know, normally when you press your throttle up and your direction up, so if you push your direction up in stabilize mode, let's see, put it up in stabilize mode, then when your stick recenters, it will go back to level. But in Acro Mode, your stick, when it goes forward, it takes the angle of the copter, but then when your stick returns, that angle will stay. So you can actually set your angle and then use your sticks to steer and control. The interesting thing about quadcopters is when you're level, your left stick yaws, and your right stick rolls and pitches, and has throttle, of course, on your left. When you pitch forward, as you pitch forward, yaw becomes roll and roll becomes yaw. So it reverses the more angle you get. So you're always using kind of both sticks to steer. I know a lot of people know that, some don't. So we're in Acro Mode now, and that, because I was messing around with the stick. So now we're hovering pretty good, and I can just kind of kick it forward a little bit and use my sticks to steer. But sometimes it's really easy to get out of control for me at this point. And I haven't done it for almost 2 weeks now. A lot easier to crash. A lot more maneuverability. Although, again, Jesse Perkins actually says that most of the Whoop guys don't fly in acro, they fly in stabilized. So, well, or they call it angle mode, which is the stab mode. And so, yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm going to put it back on stab. What air mode does, if you're not familiar with it, the motors will always run. I don't have it configured in Betaflight. The motors will actually keep running even when you don't have any throttle or anything going on. What that does is when you lose throttle, like you drop your throttle, you will not completely lose your thrust. And so it helps you do some other maneuvers gives you some other maneuvering capabilities. So, and it's definitely different not having the glasses right up against my face. I did get a new antenna that I'm going to try. I think we're only going to run through 2 batteries, though. It's getting late, and I got to go pick up my daughter pretty soon. She is wanting to get into racing, and my son actually is more interested in freestyle. He wants to get out into the woods and dive bomb things, and so 2 different very things you can do, but both extremely fun. I've taken this outside a few times to play around with. Let's go ahead and land her. I can't talk and fly at the same time yet. And that is that. So we'll go back to the bench, look at my screwdrivers. And let's pull the battery. And that, my friends, is a fully restored Beta 65S. Phenomenal little micro whoop. I can't be happier with it. Eventually I'll get good enough to fly it much better. I'm hoping to be able to race with it soon. I really want to get, in order to fly in the club, you have to have your AMA, and that's $75 a year. It's not much, but I don't have $75 right now. So once I do, I will purchase my insurance, and I will go down when they have some whoop races and make a complete fool of myself. And I'll be sure to capture that on the DVR on my headset so that y'all can watch it. Till then, next live will be on Tuesday night at 9:15. And after that, you know, I'll be doing, as I record flights and fly around outside, I'll be putting in the playlist. I will put the flights that I have there that you can watch. Until then, go ahead and, I think that's that which way behind me. So go ahead and check behind me, and go ahead and subscribe, and comment down below. Tell me what you thought. Tell me what you liked, what you didn't like. We can make some adjustments. It'll be great. Really like to get to know you all, and hopefully have you on the live so we can chat together, and hopefully I can learn something and you can learn something. Till then, have a good night, and we'll talk to you soon. All right. Good night, Philosophical Gamer. If anybody else is on there and just isn't chatting, good night to you as well. Thank you for joining me. Have a good evening. Mr. Philosophical Gamer will connect up soon here, and call it good.